I was incredibly shocked that the guy was Libyan, and it made me sad and sick to my stomach.
This young Libyan says he's lived in Manchester all his life. He asked not to be named because he feared the reaction from within the community. But, he says, he knew the bomber, Salman Abedi.
I've seen him a few times in the gym, and he used to be in and around the Woolley Range, Old Trafford area. So all Libyans here are aware of each other. We're like a closer community.
What was he like?
I know it may come as a shock to most, but to me as a person, he was incredibly polite. I mean, like, I didn't see this coming. I know people always say this of like, we never saw it coming, we never knew it was them, we never suspected them, but this is genuinely how everybody felt. He wasn't a type of kid that stood out in any way. He wasn't aggressive, he was never violent in any way, he never showed those tendencies. For example, like the last time I met this individual was about 4 weeks ago. And he didn't seem that he had anything in his mind. He was calm. I was asking him when he was going to come back to the gym, and he was like, I'm going to come back soon, and I feel like I should, and blah, blah, blah. I think he was incredibly brainwashed or made to feel desensitized towards the suffering of the people he was going to carry the attacks against. He just maybe got into the mindset of seeing, the British public as an enemy just because he has grievances towards the British establishment in a sense, or because of their foreign policy.
Do you think he was angry about foreign policy?
In my personal view, what radicalizes children, straight up, always, without a doubt, always foreign policy, because that's how it starts. Even if it takes, for example, like a religious stance at the end, I think the beginning is always a questioning of foreign policy. And I think the reason why people don't want to address these issues is because I think it forces the British establishment as a whole, and maybe even the British people, to take a more moral approach towards what's going on abroad, you know what I mean? Because then I think it forces everybody to ask the moral question, what are we doing in Iraq? What are we doing in Afghanistan? What have we done in Libya? Because, pre-war in Libya, everybody wanted to gather the forces and the coalition to go and, free Libya from this dictator. But then what happened when the dictator died? It was a power vacuum. You left it to extremists. I had a friend of mine who recently went to Libya because one of his family members was getting married. He lived in the south of Libya, which is in Sirte, which used to be the Gaddafi stronghold. And now it's just a hotbed for extremism.
Do you think the fact that there's a huge Libyan community here in Manchester, do you think the fact that there's an awful lot of toing and froing between here and Libya, an awful lot of people go back to Libya and then come back here, do you think going there and sort of seeing what is effectively a constant war, do you think that has an effect?
You know what, if we're going to be real, and if we're going to, for example, like say, a young British male can get affected by his video games or watching movies, do you not think that same effect can happen to those children that come from a war-torn country or a war zone? It's going to have an effect to them. They're going to see blood, they're going to become desensitized to the sound of gunfire and to the smell of gunpowder. That's going to be a normal occurrence for them. For example, I'll give you a perfect example. Like, he's Libyan, for example, yeah, and then when he comes back from Libya and he sees his cousins dying, he sees that there's inflation rate in the country, there's people can hardly afford to eat, he's going to ask the question, who made the first steps in order to turn Libya into the situation that it's in? Who brought the extremists to Libya? Who backed these extremists? Who funded them? Who gave them money? He's going to ask these questions, and when he asks these questions, there's going to be a question of foreign policy.
Are you hearing that a lot here in Manchester?
Without a doubt. I think foreign policy is without a doubt the number one question that gets addressed in most Libyan homes, in most Muslim communities nowadays. It's just because you can't help but question these things. And it doesn't, in a sense, it doesn't make you an extremist, it doesn't make you anti-establishment. It's the fact that, we have freedom of speech in this country, so we should be allowed to express these things. We should be allowed to question our governments. That's what a healthy democracy is. And if these young kids feel like they can't question it, and if they feel like whenever they question it, they're being attacked by people like Katie Hopkins, and they're constantly being bombarded and told that, they're extremists. Every sort of social funding that they get is always through a security lens, like Prevent and stuff like that. They're going to feel these things. If you treat someone like a suspect the whole time, they're going to end up doing the worst thing you could possibly think of. Because in essence, they think, society thinks I'm a messed up individual, so why not?
So in your age group, in the Libyan community here in Manchester, are you hearing a lot of people having frustrations like that? I mean, do you think it is fueling some extremism?
With all due respect, you'd have to be stupid to not realise that, certain foreign policies are fueling extremism. You have to be either living under a rock or just in complete and utter denial or just delusional in a sense. And I genuinely feel it's because Libya was left a mess. And I feel like when young kids from England go back to Libya and vice versa, when you have a country that's constantly being run by extremists, let's just be honest, that's being run by extremists, what do you think is going to be the outcome? I think the world shouldn't neglect Libya. In the future, Libya will turn into the Afghanistan of the Middle East. It will be the new hotbed of. It is actually the hotbed of extremism right now, and it's getting worse.